There's a moment in the Lighthouse where Willem Dafoe opens his mouth. And what comes out is not a line of dialogue. It's a curse. A Poseidon curse. Salt-soaked, ancient, erupting from somewhere below the diaphragm. From a body that seems less made of flesh than of compressed weather. The voice drops to a register that walls shouldn't be able to contain. The eyes go wide, then somehow wider. Every vein in that neck pulls taut. The audience laughs, and then, immediately, isn't sure they should have. That confusion, that inability to categorize what you just watched, that's not an accident. That is the whole game. That is Willem Dafoe. The Green Goblin, a vampire hunter, Van Gogh, a lighthouse god, a motel manager keeping watch over kids that the world has already forgotten. 7 films in a single year. Still, at 70. Hollywood has spent the last 2 decades worshipping the invisible actor, the one who disappears, who strips everything back until the performance looks accidental, like the camera just happened to be there, catching something real. Dafoe never got that memo. Or, and this is the thing, he got it, read it, understood it completely, and decided it was wrong. Because what he's been building for 40 years isn't an argument against truth. It's an argument about what kind of truth a human face can hold. And his answer reaches back past the method, past Stanislavski, past cinema itself. His answer is the grotesque. Not grotesque as insult, not grotesque as freakishness or dysfunction. Grotesque as vocabulary, as an expressionist tradition that stretches back through Francis Bacon's screaming popes, through Munch, through the massed theater of ancient Greece. A tradition built on the radical idea that distortion, controlled distortion, can cut closer to human truth than any photograph of a normal face ever could. His face, a medium. His body, a sculpture that reshapes itself, film by film. His presence, a weather system you feel before you understand. He doesn't play characters. He builds them, bone by bone. Look at the architecture of that face. Really look at it. The orbital structure, severe, deep set, almost architectural in the way those brow bones create shadow. The eyes themselves, pale, restless, capable of widening into something almost childlike, then narrowing to something you would not want pointed at you in a dark room. The jaw that juts forward with mechanical precision. The smile that lives in uncanny valley real estate, somewhere between warmth and threat, never fully committing to either. In another era, this face would have been a problem. Hollywood has a template, a geometry. Dafoe doesn't fit it, never did. And yet, precisely because of that, every director who matters has found their way to him eventually. Scorsese, Lynch, Stone, Eggers, Lanthimos, von Trier, Anderson, Herzog, Cronenberg. Not despite the face, because of it. Because a face that exists slightly outside the register of the familiar is a face that can travel to places where photogenic faces get stopped at the border. It can play a saint and have you believe the halo. Turn 45 degrees and have you believe the horns. Scorsese understood this in 1988, The Last Temptation of Christ. Immediately branded blasphemy by people who hadn't seen it. But the people who did saw something they hadn't expected. A Christ who felt genuinely human, conflicted, frightened, carrying his destiny like a migraine that never stops. That's not a script trick. That's not lighting. That's a face built to hold contradiction without resolving it. To be holy and haunted at the same time, and for both to feel true. That particular quality has a name in Expressionist theory. It's called plasticity, the capacity of a physical form to communicate across extreme emotional distances without losing legibility. And Dafoe has more of it than anyone working. But plasticity isn't something you're simply born with. It's something you train. And the training was nothing like what you'd expect. Forget Hollywood. Forget the method. Forget every acting school that teaches you to feel your way to a performance. Where Dafoe came from was a warehouse. Lower Manhattan, late 1970s. A group of artists who believed theater should never try to look like life, because the moment it does, it's already lying. The Wooster Group, one of the most radical experimental theater ensembles in American history, founded by Elizabeth Lecomte, built on a principle that destroyed the traditional pecking order of the stage. Technicians mattered as much as actors. Actors mattered as much as technicians. The body of the performer was not a vessel for psychology. It was a physical instrument. Full stop. Dafoe has talked about what those years gave him. This task-based approach to performance. The idea that everything begins with doing, not showing. You don't perform grief. You execute an action. Move the chair. Cross the room. Hold the weight. And you let what you feel arrive as a consequence of what the body does first. Body first, mind follows. That sounds almost too simple. But in practice, it's one of the most demanding disciplines in performance, because it demands total physical commitment, moment to moment, with nowhere to hide. No internal monologue to fall back on. No, my character would feel. Just, what does this body do right now? It's why he does his own stunts. Always. Not as a publicity point, as a philosophical commitment. There's no going back. You go forward. Forward, forward, forward. And in that forward motion, something happens that no amount of emotional preparation can replicate. You become fully present. The character isn't something you carry. It's something the situation generates in you. That's theatrical massimalismo. The body as a plastic medium, capable of being shaped, stretched, distorted, not in service of show, but in service of truth. The screen, for Dafoe, has always been just a frame around a stage he never really left. And now, with that foundation locked in, let's talk about what happens when you take that training and put it behind a mask that cannot move. 2002. Spider-Man. And a problem that would have neutralized a lesser performer. The Green Goblin costume. Rigid. Expressionless. A fixed-feature prop department creation that covers everything from forehead to chin. For most actors, a containment device. A performance killer. You put that on and the face goes silent. Dafoe looked at it and saw an invitation. If the face is gone, the body has to become the face. Every gesture becomes a sentence. Every head tilt, every shoulder rotation, the speed at which the torso changes direction. All of it has to carry what the face can no longer say. Watch him as the Goblin. There's a coiled, hyper-alert quality to the physicality. Not quite human, not quite animal. Something in between. The laughter is operatic. Completely, deliberately unembarrassed by its own extremity. And when the mask comes off, as Norman Osborn, that jaw works with a rigid, barely controlled tension. You can actually see the two personalities fighting for the same face, and neither one winning. No dialogue needed. The expressionist vocabulary does all of it. 20 years later in No Way Home, Same role, same actor, and it hits harder the second time. Because the audience had grown up. They knew what they were watching wasn't a comic book villain. It was a Dafoe construction, built in the Wooster Group, deployed at full power. Then there is the Lighthouse. Robert Eggers' film is perhaps the most formally extreme piece of American cinema of the last decade. Black and white, shot in a near-square 1.19:1 Academy ratio, a frame that feels like it's pressing inward on everything inside it. Howling wind, a brutalist rock off the coast of Nova Scotia. The aesthetics are not decoration. They are a pressure system designed to amplify performance, to strip every actor down to what they actually have. Dafoe plays Thomas Wake, a lighthouse keeper whose relationship to the lamp has passed beyond obsession into something that functions as a private theology. He is pompous. He is violent. He is terrifying. And in the film's most extraordinary moments, he is cosmic. A small, weathered human man who has somehow convinced himself he is a god of the sea, and whose conviction is so total, so physically inhabited, that the audience begins to agree with him. The monologues. God, the monologues. He delivers them facing forward, unblinking, like the camera is not a recording device, but a congregation he is preaching at. The posture is ancient. He plants himself wide and low, immovable, like something the ocean threw up and couldn't take back. The voice drops to a baritone that sounds dredged from below sea level, gravel and salt and decades of compressed fury. And just when the grandeur threatens to tip into parody, his eyes lose focus. Just slightly, as if he's seeing something past the horizon, past the film itself. That's the precision underneath the spectacle. That's the discipline holding the chaos together. The weather isn't a backdrop for Thomas Wake. The weather is inside him. He's been shaped by it until he and it are the same thing. That is visceral authenticity at its absolute outer limit. Not naturalism, not realism. Something older than both. Something that doesn't have a clean modern name, but that every audience in every era has always recognized when they feel it. If you're not subscribed to MovieScale yet, hit the button below. We do this every single week. We're not going anywhere. Here's the thing about monsters, though. The same hands that build them can build something else entirely. The same face that curls into the goblin's scream, that delivered a Poseidon curse with total conviction, can produce, when turned in a different direction, the warmest thing you've seen on a screen in years. Bobby, the Florida Project. A motel manager in Orlando whose guests are the people the city chewed up and spat out. He watches over them, the kids especially, with a quiet, unheroic vigilance that nobody asked of him and nobody's paying him extra for. Dafoe plays him with a stillness that feels unlike everything else in his catalog. No theatricality, no grotesque contortion, just presence, attention, care, treated as a physical act. And here's where the Wooster Group training reveals its deepest logic. It's the same technique. Exactly. Just redirected. The task isn't Project Menace. The task is take care. And when a body trained in full somatic truth executes that task, the warmth doesn't feel performed. It arrives, naturally, like weather. Poor Things. Dr. Godwin Baxter. Scarred face. 3 hours in the makeup chair each morning. A brilliant, morally ruined man who built a daughter out of a corpse and is slowly being undone by what he made. Physically deformed, emotionally impossible, magnificent. And through all the prosthetics, through everything that layers between his face and the camera, the performance only sharpens. The limitations force the expressionist vocabulary to work harder. Every micro movement of those eyes carries what the rest of the face can no longer deliver. That is the grotesque at its most generous. It doesn't conceal humanity, it exposes it, by distorting the surface until the interior has nowhere left to hide. The monster and the saint aren't opposites. They're the same face, pointed at different truths. Most Hollywood careers narrow with age. The industry is obsessed with youth. The window closes. The range shrinks. The face accumulates history, and the industry doesn't know what to do with history. Dafoe turned 70 in 2025. 7 films that year. Sought after by the best directors alive. How? He never asked for permission to be interesting. Never softened the edges to fit a template. Never renegotiated himself into something more palatable. He found the directors building worlds strange enough to need him, and he walked in with his full, uncompromised physical architecture and made their visions bigger. Wes Anderson needed his comedic precision, that gift for deadpan that somehow never breaks the world it inhabits. Robert Eggers needed mythological scale, something that could fill the frame of a 1.19 box without losing its humanity. Yorgos Lanthimos needed a man who could play a human being operating on a logic that's 1 degree adjacent to ours. Close enough to follow, wrong enough to disturb. They all needed the same thing. A performer for whom the body is not a constraint. A performer for whom the body is a language. That language, this expressionist vocabulary, this plasticity in service of somatic truth, is the oldest and most durable instrument in the entire history of performance. Masks were performing tragedy before cinema was a word. The grotesque was telling truths that polished beauty couldn't reach before Stanislavski wrote a single note. Dafoe didn't invent that tradition. He inherited it. Through a warehouse in Lower Manhattan in 1977. Through a woman named Elizabeth Lecomte, who told him the body goes first. And what he has proved, film by film, year by year, role by role, is that cinema's most honest faces are often its most unusual ones. That the angular face, the asymmetrical face, the difficult face, is not a problem to be solved. It's a resource, a gift, an inheritance from every distorted, expressive, truth-seeking artist who ever worked in the space between beautiful and strange. The monster and the saint are not opposites. They are the same face, different angles, different light. And it takes extraordinary technical mastery and extraordinary courage to let both of them live in the same body, in the same career, without ever flinching, without ever asking the audience for their permission. Willem Dafoe is that artist. Cinema's grotesque, its expressionist canvas, its most useful, most dangerous, most irreplaceable face. And he is nowhere near finished. That's Willem Dafoe, the master of the grotesque. If this changed how you see his work, or if it made you need to put on the Lighthouse right now, full volume, lights off, then we did exactly what we came here to do. Drop a comment. Tell me which Dafoe performance lives in your head and refuses to leave. Subscribe to MovieScale. New essays every week. Deep dives that take cinema apart to find what's beating inside it. Until next time.